Picture this: the sun is just beginning to rise over a misty medieval village. The fields stretch out like a living tapestry, dotted with figures bent low to the earth. They are peasants, the backbone of medieval society, men and women whose hands tell the story of survival, endurance, and quiet genius. To the lords, they were merely laborers. To history, they often appear as shadows in the background. Yet hidden in their daily toil were secrets of farming, survival, and resilience that modern people have long forgotten. These were not just workers of the soil, they were inventors, experimenters, and guardians of knowledge passed down through generations. The life of a medieval peasant was harsh. Their homes were small, their lives bound to the rhythm of the seasons, and their days filled with endless labor. But out of that struggle came remarkable methods of farming, ways of coaxing life out of stubborn land without the benefit of modern machines, fertilizers, or technology. They knew things we've lost, and perhaps things we desperately need again. Imagine a farmer standing at the edge of his field in the year 1200. He has no tractor, no chemical sprays, no weather forecasts. What he has instead is observation. He studies the sky, the wind, the feel of the soil beneath his fingers. He knows by instinct and inherited wisdom when to sow, when to harvest, and how to protect his crops. These secrets were not written in books. They were carved into memory and muscle. And they worked. One secret was crop rotation. To us today, it sounds simple: plant one type of crop this year and a different one the next. But for peasants, it was revolutionary. They discovered that the soil itself could be exhausted if planted with the same crop again and again. So, they rotated. Wheat one year, barley the next, legumes the year after. Each crop replenished the soil in its own way, keeping it fertile. Without this, the earth would turn barren. With it, they fed villages and kept communities alive. Another forgotten wisdom was the use of natural fertilizers. They did not have chemical companies delivering sacks of powder. Instead, they used what they had: animal manure, composted plant matter, and even ashes from their hearths. Nothing was wasted. The scraps of daily life went back into the earth to give it strength. They turned waste into abundance, a cycle of life modern agriculture often ignores. But perhaps the most fascinating secret was how medieval peasants managed water. Irrigation was life or death. Without it, crops would wither in dry summers. So, they dug ditches, diverted streams, and built simple yet effective channels to carry water where it was needed. In wetter lands, they learned to drain marshy ground, transforming swamp into farmland. With no pumps, no pipes, only hand tools and persistence, they reshaped their environment to keep food growing. And then there was the rhythm of labor itself. A medieval peasant worked with the sun. They knew when to rest, when to rise, when to push their strength, and when to let the land breathe. They followed a calendar tied not to clocks, but to the cycle of nature. Festivals and holy days often aligned with planting and harvest, giving spiritual weight to their work. Farming was not just survival, it was part of the great order of life. Their year was a wheel that turned endlessly: spring for planting, summer for care, autumn for harvest, and winter for preservation. In spring, they broke the hard ground with wooden plows tipped with iron, the oxen straining forward as clods of earth turned. In summer, weeds had to be pulled by hand, and crops watched for pests or blight. Autumn was a time of desperate labor, harvesting every grain before the rains ruined it. Winter, though quieter, was no rest. Animals had to be fed, food rationed carefully, tools repaired for the coming year. Consider their tools: wooden plows, sickles sharp as the crescent moon, scythes swinging in golden fields. Simple, yes, but in the hands of skilled workers, these tools became extensions of their bodies. A peasant could cut grain faster than one might expect, bending, swinging, binding sheaves in steady rhythm. Their efficiency came not from machines but from practice, endurance, and necessity. Every movement mattered. Every mistake could mean hunger. They also knew the power of community. Farming was not a solitary act. Whole villages worked together, plowing fields, planting seeds, harvesting crops. A family alone could not survive a failed harvest, but together they shared resources, tools, and knowledge. Cooperation was one of their greatest secrets. While lords and nobles feasted in castles, it was peasants who held the true knowledge of how to keep people alive. They were silent, invisible masters of the land. Children grew up in this world of constant work, learning by doing. A boy might follow his father into the fields, carrying a water jug or chasing birds from the crops. A girl might gather herbs with her mother, learning which plants healed wounds or kept insects away. Knowledge was not written. It was spoken, shown, lived. In this way, each generation inherited a library of survival without ever opening a book. The peasants also had an eye for preservation. Without refrigeration, food could rot in days. Yet they discovered methods to make harvests last through long winters. They dried beans and peas, smoked meats, salted fish, and stored grains in tightly sealed containers to protect them from damp and pests. They buried root vegetables in pits lined with straw to keep them fresh. These forgotten arts of preservation were the difference between life and starvation. And they worked for centuries. There's another layer to their secrets. Herbal knowledge. Farmers knew which plants grew best together. They discovered companion planting, where certain herbs could repel pests or improve the growth of nearby crops. Garlic and onions to deter insects, beans climbing alongside tall stalks of grain, herbs scattered to keep the soil balanced. This was not random chance. It was wisdom tested over countless generations. Beyond the practical, farming also carried a spiritual weight. Peasants often blessed their fields before sowing seeds, believing the earth itself was alive and required respect. Certain rituals marked the turning of seasons. Fires lit in spring to chase away frost, prayers said over harvested grain, offerings placed in barns to protect livestock. To them, farming was not simply work. It was a sacred relationship with the land. The medieval peasant was not a scientist in the modern sense, but in truth, they were practicing science every day. They experimented with seeds, tested methods, watched results, and adapted. Their laboratory was the field, their notebook the earth, their legacy the survival of entire societies. Without them, the grand cathedrals, the knights, and the kingdoms of the Middle Ages would have collapsed. All wealth rested on the shoulders of those who worked the soil. And yet, their knowledge slipped through time's fingers. With the arrival of machines, industrial farming, and chemical fertilizers, we forgot the subtle art of survival they mastered. We traded patience for speed, balance for excess. But today, as we look towards sustainability, as we search for better ways to feed the world, their secrets whisper to us again. Think of it: rotating crops to keep soil fertile instead of exhausting it, using natural compost instead of chemicals, managing water with simple systems instead of draining rivers dry, preserving food with salt, smoke, and root cellars instead of endless plastic packaging. Farming in tune with the land rather than against it. These are not relics of the past. They are blueprints for a future we desperately need. The medieval peasant did not live an easy life. Their backs bent under heavy labor, their hands cracked and rough, their nights often filled with hunger and uncertainty. But out of that hardship came ingenuity. Out of necessity came wisdom. And though history books may not remember their names, their knowledge sustained generations. So next time you see a field or a garden or even a simple patch of soil, remember, beneath our feet lies the same earth the medieval peasants once worked with bare hands. Their secrets are not truly lost. They are waiting for us to listen, to learn, and to carry them forward. In their struggle, we find guidance. In their forgotten wisdom, we may find our future.